In this week's drive, we make a splash, have a crash, surf the net, and hit the dirt. All this and more in this week's Drive. We start this week with the rain-drenched DTM, or German touring car race at Zolder in Belgium. Both qualifying, headed by Laurent Alliot, and the race was started behind the safety car, as the conditions made life difficult for the 20-car field. The flying start played into the hands of Alliot, who was able to pull away when the safety car pulled off at the end of the fourth lap. The Frenchman was the only driver whose early laps were not affected by spray. Timo Scheider, who started second, ran off the track on lap 7, but the German fought back to finish 5th. Stefan Mucker lost control into the chicane, but managed to get back onto the track. Patrick Huisman also slid off the track on lap 8 and fell back to 8th place, eventually finishing 12th. Alliot went into the pits with his lead under threat, but he was able to hold off Sweden's Matthias Ekstrom and stay ahead. Martin Tomisch was the first driver to retire. The German slid into the gravel on lap 10 and his race was over. Michael Bartels then pulled out of the pit lane just before the safety car came out as a result and jumped into the lead. But the German threw away his chances of a sensational victory when he passed the safety car on lap 15 and was shown a black flag. Bartels returned to the pit lane for a 30-second stop-go penalty and dropped back to 8th. Christian Albers lost it on lap 22 and finished in the gravel, but the red flag signalled an early end to the race, and the Dutchman held the 6th place he had before crashing out. Victory went to Aiello, ahead of teammate Christian Abt and Bernd Schneider. It was Aiello's second consecutive victory of the season, and he leads the drivers' standings with 25 points. When rain washed out the NASCAR Richmond 400 in Virginia, USA, drivers, pit crew and fans came back the next day for the final 334 laps. Ricky Rudd made his 655th consecutive start to tie Terry Labonte's mark, but lost any hope of a win when he crashed with 91 laps to go. Rudd had the dominant car until a flat front tyre caused Rusty Wallace to clip Rudd, sending him into the wall.
Here comes the land rush back to the caution flag.
With 67 laps left, Jimmy Spencer bumped Mark Martin, setting him loose and causing a pack of cars to try and brake in a cloud of smoke. 10 cars were involved in the accident, including series points leader Sterling Marlin.
Nobody get lap back. All this started because the 11 car and Jimmy Spencer got together. They cleared it, and then all this happened behind them. I was looking.
After following on rookie Ryan Newman's bumpers for several laps, Tony Stewart eventually sneaked underneath on the 372nd lap, rode side by side with Newman for a lap, and then pulled away entering the first turn.
Tony Stewart's Home Depot Pontiac wins the Pontiac Excitement 400.
Ryan Newman second, Jeff Burton third, teammate Mark Martin in fourth, Jeremy Mayfield finishes fifth, Matt Kinson sixth, Jeff Gordon seventh, Steve Grissom eighth, Ricky Craven ninth, and Jimmy Spencer.
Stewart qualified third, but started 41st because he changed an engine overnight. The victory was his 14th in 115 Winston Cup starts, shaking off the disappointment of consecutive 29th place runs. Newman held on for second, followed by Jack Roush. Formula One is the pinnacle of motorsport technology, and nowhere is that more evident than in the increasing use of computers in design studio, factory, pit lane, and on the track. For years, cars have transmitted huge amounts of data back to engineers in the pits and also at the factory, often on the other side of the world. If something was going wrong, the team could often advise the driver ahead of time. He could either then make some adjustments from the cockpit or alter his driving style. But a rule change this year has meant that this telemetry, formerly one-way, is now two-way. Williams BMW cars rely on compact technology, a relationship that's more crucial now that the team is allowed to adjust engine parameters while the car is still out on the track.
It will allow us to send signals to the car, messages in terms of operation of the car, and also in terms of communicating with the driver. We will be able to do from the pit lane, change certain functions of the car also from the pit lane without having to be implemented by the driver.
Formula One engines are now so complex and sensitive to minute changes that they are dependent upon computer technology to perform even the most basic tasks.
We can't start the car up without it being, let's say, linked to a computer to operate things like throttle, fuel injection, fuel mixture and engine mapping, and also in terms of the function of the gearbox. The initial setup of the car is solely done via a laptop computer. So if you took everything away, we can just about operate the car from a laptop, which is how we do on the grid, effectively at the start of a Grand Prix. But without a laptop, we even have problems starting the car.
It's always been possible to adjust the engine with a computer, but in the past the rules only permitted it while the car was stationary in the pit lane. That's why we often saw a laptop computer plugged into the cars the moment they stopped. But now adjustments can be made by a radio signal, meaning that if a driver is using too much fuel, technicians who previously were always aware of that from their computer displays need no longer just watch or give the driver instructions over the radio, but can make changes themselves at once.
Well, it's going to be a big help for all the teams, I guess, to influence the engine or the car during the race if something goes wrong, to let the driver know, to see in advance and to save money, because then you could even stop a lot earlier because you see if something is wrong with the engine, and that's a big help for me.
Taking care of a highly stressed high-tech item like a Formula One engine at racing speed is a complex task, and this bi-directional telemetry makes it much easier.
With Compact on our side, we have different possibilities than I've ever experienced before. And it's basically computers running the whole car by now, and if something or if one number goes wrong, then you have a problem.
It's a double-sided advantage. As well as being able to avoid retirement or hugely expensive engine blow-ups because of a small problem, it also frees the drivers to concentrate on their racing.
Some of the different control systems were allowed to make modifications to the parameters to sort of keep the systems in an optimum running shape. And also we're looking at making changes if a problem arises, for instance, and quite often we've got redundancy in our sensors, and it's quite useful to be able to include a human assessment from the pits and then make a change from there and not have to affect the driver.
Even for a driver like Juan Pablo Montoya, coming to Formula One from a premier single-seat championship in America, the difference between technology levels is enormous.
And if you really think about it, that's what Formula One is all about. You know, it's the ultimate technology, it's the ultimate machine. You know, everything that is in technology side, the best is in Formula One.
And of course, that technology isn't only expressed in the incredible capabilities of the cars, but also in the way it permits such rapid developments to be made.
You know, technology is what makes a car evolve so quickly. And if you go to the factory, everything is run by computers. You know, it's crazy.
Formula One is the pinnacle of automotive engineering, and the most sophisticated racing cars in the world depend on the most sophisticated computers. Some of the world's top motorcycle racers visited a bullfighter's ranch before the Spanish MotoGP. Riders Tohuru Ukawa, Sete Gibernau, Norik Abe, Alex Barros, Fonzi Nito and Roberto Locatelli visited Jesulín de Bruque on his ranch and learnt the basics. The star bullfighter welcomes fellow Spaniard Sete Gibernau. Abe and Ukawa seem glad he's up there, while Brazilian Alex Barros is impressed with his size. And Norik finds a more familiar position. A practical lesson was laid on too. After all, these riders are supposed to be scared of nothing and have razor-sharp reflexes, aren't they? Alex Barros is shown how it's done and how to escape. Then it's Norik's turn, but the Japanese star quickly bottles out and runs for safety. Alex tries again with the same result. And these are very little bulls. In qualifying practice, world champ Valentino Rossi is also in the mood for a bit of fun. But once he's out on the track, the pace of practice puts an end to the horseplay. After a change of tyres, Rossi quickly refocused to get his 990cc four-stroke Honda in the groove and set the benchmark time, going over half a second faster than his best the day before. It was to be enough to confirm his third pole position of the season. Alex Barros knew what he had to do on his two-stroke Honda. Despite his best effort, he missed pole by 1/3 of a second, but was still second on the grid. Loris Capirossi claimed third, less than 1/10 of a second off his teammates' time, the two Honda Pons riders making considerable progress on the previous day's times. Daijiro Kato stayed on track for a 4th place on the all-Honda front row, half a second off Rossi's pace. Spaniard Carlos Checa was the fastest Yamaha rider on his 4-stroke M1 in 5th, another 2/10 further back. 127,000 fans flocked to the Jerez track for the first European round of the MotoGP World Championship, and they were treated to a real scrap between 5 Honda riders. But it was a bad day for Max Biaggi. He and Olivier Jacques had 10-second stop-and-go penalties. The Frenchman took his and finished 11th, but Biaggi didn't, was shown the black flag and was disqualified. Rossi charged hard and took the lead from teammate Ukawa, pulling away with a series of fast laps. Daijiro Kato's front row start with some aggressive passing gave him his first MotoGP podium for 2nd place. Loris Capirossi and Toru Ukawa fought a classic battle for the final podium position after Barros dropped back to 5th. Eventually it was the Japanese rider who claimed 3rd. Rossi took a record-equaling 4th victory, admitting that despite the new bike wearing tyres out faster, it has good balance and he's now looking forward to a record 5th win.
With this bike at the end, it's difficult because the tyre finish very much and it's difficult to control the bike, but anyway, it's possible to have a quite good rhythm and it's possible to win. I'm very happy because here I like very much this place, this track, and we wait for the next race.
Local fans had good reason to celebrate in the 250 class, with Fonzi Nito taking his first career win with a brilliant ride. Fellow Spaniard Emilio Alzamora took advantage of a last-lap collision between Marco Melandri and Franco Battagni to take third spot behind Roberto Rolfo. The two Italians had been battling for third when they touched, and both went off, with Melandri down and out. Fonzi worked his way through the field to the delight of the thousands of Spanish fans and his uncle Angel, a multiple world champion himself. As usual, the 125 race was incident-packed with some rough tactics and big tumbles. Alex De Angelis passes world champ Manuel Poggiali, but the two touch and De Angelis goes down. Lucio Cecchinello took the win after fending off a last-lap challenge from Poggiali. The reigning champion slid into the gravel and remounted to finish 10th, but was later excluded from the results after Stewart's ruled that he had caused the collision with De Angelis. To France now for the World Motocross Championships. Yamaha's 500cc world champ Stefan Everts was bidding for his second consecutive victory in France, following his record-breaking 51st win at the end of April. The Belgian started well in the 17-lap race, but had to make up ground on injured KTM rider Joel Smets, who needed a pain-killing injection before the race for an injured shoulder. As Everts caught up, the pair launched into a skirmish as Smets valiantly tried to defend his lead. Everts was clearly faster and eventually passed his rival with an aggressive move on an uphill section of the course. Credit must go to Smets for battling through the event, eventually finishing 5th. Everts held on to take the checkered flag ahead of Frenchman Yves de Maria, who scored his first podium finish since Tuchendal in 2001 on a 250. Spain's Javier Garcia Vico came third, his best performance of the season. In the 250 race, the French crowd were delighted to see Michael Pichon overtake Germany's Pit Breyer to grab the lead before the end of the first lap. Breyer went on to finish 4th after crashing twice. Pichon, the reigning world champion, continued his dominant form by pulling away from the rest of the field on his Suzuki. The 26-year-old Frenchman went on to win by over 30 seconds from compatriot Fred Bowley, who posted his third podium finish for the season for Yamaha. New Zealand's Josh Coppins was third for Honda. The humble English lawnmower will never be the same again after the 22nd 12-hour lawnmower race. It was bar chat in 1973 that set right-minded people in search of the ultimate backyard racer. Jim Gavin was in the Cricketer's Arms back in '73. Then a sports consultant, he'd just returned from a rally and talk turned to motorsport.
Of all the countries in the world, there are more gardens here, and every single garden has a lawnmower. They've had lawnmowers for 50 years. There must be lawnmowers in every shed. So we stuck up a notice on the wall just there saying British Grand Prix for lawnmowers will be held at Murphy's Field in Cold Harbour, Saturday, whatever. Like that, about 40, 50 lawnmowers turned up. There were lawnmowers everywhere, but numbers on them.
The public became interested when, in 1975, British Grand Prix ace Sterling Moss was attracted to the sport by the club atmosphere and the fun of racing. But Jim Gavin still wasn't content that the sport had found its ultimate challenge.
What I used to enjoy at the racing days was long-distance sports car racing. Long-distance stuff where you had a bit of night time. So we thought we'd run a long-distance race, as well as all the other races.
The first 12-hour race was in 1978, and with a Le Mans start, it attracted 47 entries. The winners were Sterling Moss himself and Le Mans winner Derek Bell. Enthusiasm for the sport has grown since then. Months of preparation make sure the racers are at their best. The very sideways racing team captain Andy Stemp has the strategy to win.
You need good handling on the machine and plenty of spares. But to be honest, nowadays with so many quick motors, if you need to change an axle, engine, brakes, anything like that, you're out the race. You're not going to come in the top 2. And there's only one position in 12 hour, and that's winning it.
Change a few things for the race because obviously it's got to last longer. We're changing the gearing now, completely different big track, and ourselves different methods. You know, alcohol abuse, eggs, bacon. You know, and then through today, protein drinks, protein bars, and not really much food.
47 machines lined up for the Le Mans start on the stubble field at Brinsbury College in Billinghurst in West Sussex. As they screamed off along the 1 kilometre track, bucking and almost out of control, they reached speeds of up to 35 miles an hour, or about 50 kilometres an hour. The drivers were in for a long night, one which Clive Atten knows all too well.
When you say spirits high, they're not. We're just sitting there in our tent, just dreading the next driver coming in because it means one of us will have to go out, you see. So it's purely Dunkirk spirit, definitely. Yeah, you're just there to survive, basically.
The heavens opened up and it poured with rain for the first 4 hours of the race, making conditions extremely tough and very muddy. Drivers struggled to maintain control of the mowers around the bends. Eventually, the rain subsided, but the track remained slippery throughout the race. There are 3 classes of lawn mower eligible for racing. Group 2 entries look like a traditional mower with a seat attached. Those in Group 3 look like buggies. Among them, the favourite teams, Very Sideways Racing and Northerners Kick Grass. The lawn tractor class covers those which are larger than the buggies and look like mini tractors. It's important to make sure that the timekeepers log every lap, even if you can't actually see where you're going. It wouldn't be England if it wasn't raining somewhere. At least it washes off some of the mud. For some, it was running repairs. For one team, the conditions were diabolical.
I think we could go faster if we picked it up and ran around with it under his arm, to tell you the truth. But yeah, we've had a lot of fun.
As dawn broke, so did the weather, with a sunny morning for the last 3 hours. It was just too much for some, and just too cold for others. Experience and preparation paid off as Andy Stemp in Very Sideways Racing's number 14 took the checkered flag, followed by Steve Richardson and the Northerners Kick Grass team. It isn't quite the same as the Le Mans 24 Hour. There's no prize money at the winner's podium. They do it just for fun. Well, that's all for this week, but so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.